कैसे हैं आप लोग सब? Can you hear me? Okay, challenge, that's good. So today we will talk about infectious diseases के some basic concepts, some definitions, and as we go along, you can ask questions. I want this session to be a bit interactive. That will help me also understand where you're facing difficulty and which point to elaborate, and you will also feel more connected. So should we start? Okay, Chale, let's start today's presentation. Can you see my screen? And the slides are moving? Okay. Thank you, Bushra. Thank you, Zataisha. Zunaira, Navila, thank you very much. Okay, so the outline for today's talk is some basic concepts, the process of disease causation, some signs and symptoms of infections, we will discuss them, disease transmission, how diseases are transmitted, especially with respect to infectious diseases, host susceptibility, and virulence of microorganisms. So, आवाज नहीं आ रही आता, क्या कम आ रही है या बिल्कुल नहीं आ रही? क्लियर है? आई थिंक अतः आप अपने एंड पे चेक कर लें, बिकॉज बाकी लोगों को तो आवाज आ रही है. मे बी हेडफोन्स ट्राई कर लें, दैट विल हेल्प. ठीक है. So basic concepts में what is infection? So infection is the deposition and multiplication of organisms in tissues or on body surfaces, which usually causes adverse effects. So it is very important to understand कि हर bug या हर organism जो हमारी body पे आके लगेगा या touch करेगा या हमारे contact में आएगा, हमारे mucosal surfaces की contact में आएगा, क्या वो सारे organisms जो है वो disease cause कर सकते हैं? Okay, some people are having problem. I think it's better to check your internet connection if that is causing a problem. Other people are able to hear, so I think things are clear from this side. No voice. Okay. Okay, so it seems like some people are having a problem and it looks like it's at their end. So now I will just continue with the presentation without any pause. If everybody starts having a problem, then please raise your hands or let me know. Okay. So infection is the deposition and multiplication of organisms in tissues or on body surfaces, which usually causes adverse effects. ऑब्वियसली बिकॉज हमारी बॉडी को अपने इन्वायरमेंट से हर वक्त ये फिक्र, ये डर तो रहता है कि कोई भी ऑर्गेनिज्म हम पे अटैक कर सकता है और इन्फेक्शन कॉज कर सकता है. बट as you know, those who are healthy, they are able to take control of that organism and it does not spread or it does not cause severe damage. But those who are not very healthy or are susceptible to developing severe infections, they then succumb to that infection. So whenever an organism comes in contact with our body, it is not necessary that they cause infection. We are walking around in the environment, we are living our lives, all of us, and most of us are healthy and they're not bothered by the organisms in the environment. But some of us do develop some signs and symptoms, and some of very few among us may develop severe infection from that organism. So we will discuss what could be the factors that can lead to severe infections in some of us. On the other hand, colonization of organisms is when the organism is present on the body surface or inside the body also, but it does not cause any reaction to the host or any damage to the host. Can that be harmful in any way? Colonization. Can you think of an example where colonization can be harmful? Any example from the audience where colonization of an organism can be harmful? So colonization is when organisms are lying on your body and they're inside your body, in your mouth, in your gut, open wound. Okay. So in open wound, very good example. What kind of organism can be harmful in an open wound? If somebody has, yes, burns, open wounds, yes. Abscesses, they can cause abscesses. So the most notorious organism in this group is the Staph aureus. Okay, the Staphylococcus aureus is an organism that can be a normal commensal in many of us, especially healthcare workers. But when there is a breach in the mucosa or in the skin, that organism can grow in that breach and cause an abscess. It can cause severe disseminated infections, and we know that MRSA is a very, very harmful nosocomial infection also, because many patients are harboring that, many healthcare workers are harboring that. And it is very important for healthcare workers like you guys to understand that we as healthcare workers many a times are colonized by these resistant organisms, MRSA, MDRs, yes, very good. And we take these organisms home. And in that process, our families become colonized. So we can have, in our OPDs, we have very commonly seen nurses or doctors who themselves are not having any symptoms, but their young kids or their young nephews and nieces, they start having boils and fruncles on their bodies, and they are found to be MRSA positive. So where did that MRSA come from? From us. So that is why it's very important from health, from infection control point of view, that whenever we go home, we first separate our clothing, we wash our hands properly, we sort of disinfect ourselves, and then come in contact with our families. And we keep our dresses, our attires separately, so that they're not in direct contact with the other members of the family. Okay. So what is a nosocomial infection? Nosocomial infection is a healthcare associated infection or a hospital acquired infection, right? And what is the, cutoff for, yes, hospital acquired. Very good, Nadia. So what is the cutoff for calling an infection a nosocomial infection or a community acquired infection? Yes, very good, Janera, Bushra. infections that we acquire from the hospital. So if a patient is admitted, for example, with heart failure, he does not have any history of fever, he does not have any cough, he simply has shortness of breath and X-ray shows pulmonary edema. Yes, very good, Saima. It's 48 hours. So if somebody gets admitted with, yes, my hands, yeah, it is infection from the hospital. So if somebody gets admitted with any complaint other than any infectious cause, and after 48 hours they start showing symptoms of an infection, they develop a fever in the hospital. So in that case, it is called a nosocomial infection. And sometimes what happens is that patients remain admitted in the hospital, their course remains unremarkable, they do not have any infection in the hospital, they go home. And at home, they start having fevers. So in that case, any contact with the hospital environment in the last 90 days is called a nosocomial infection. Anybody who gets admitted at a hospital and gets discharged or stays in a hospital for a significant length of time, for example, ER में आए, ER में उनको 6 से 7 घंटे लगे, उनको कैन्युलेशन हुई, उनको कैथेटर डला, फोली कैथेटर डला, और फिर वो उसी दिन डिस्चार्ज हो गए. So that will be counted as a hospital contact, a significant hospital contact. OPD को हम नहीं लेते because OPD is a short contact. और उसमें इतना एक्सपोजर नहीं होता, लेकिन अगर ER आ रहा है, डे केयर में आ रहा है, जहाँ पर कैन्युलेशन हो रही हैं, प्रोसीजर्स हो रहे हैं, so that is considered a significant hospital contact. And in that case, a 90-day follow-up is required for development of any nosocomial infections. On the other hand, community infection. Community infection is an infection in an otherwise healthy or immunocompromised host, but that started in the community and he did not have any direct contact with the healthcare system. Okay. So I hope these concepts are clear to everybody. Okay. Some concepts about how to get rid of infections. Decontamination. Decontamination is a process or treatment that cleanses a medical device, instrument, or environmental surface to remove contaminants such as microorganisms. Okay, so there are microorganisms everywhere on our environments, right? Less in our home environment, but more in the hospital environment. Even in the hospital, in the work environment also, for example, you're sitting on a desk, that is also more colonized than a normal hospital environment or a normal workplace environment. अगर कोई किसी ऑफिस में काम कर रहा है, वहां पर कंटामिनेशन कम होगी, है cleansing. Okay, decontamination means cleansing, just cleansing. Can everybody hear me? Because internet connection का message आया है कि it is unstable. Okay. So that is decontamination. Disinfection is the destruction of pathogenic and other microorganisms by physical or chemical means. Disinfection is less lethal than sterilization because it destroys most recognized pathogenic microorganisms, but not necessarily all microbial forms such as bacterial spores. So we know that microorganisms can be present in their live forms or in their spore forms, right? Especially bacteria and fungi. They can have their spores everywhere in the environment, in the air, in the soil, on surfaces. And so decontamination is the least that we can do, where we can simply cleanse it down. Disinfection is by either physical means or chemical means. There are different methods for that. I will not go into the details of those methods. But we have to understand that the first level of cleaning is decontamination. Disinfection is the second level, which is less lethal than sterilization, which is the third level. And by disinfection, we are able to destroy most of the organisms except spores. Okay, that is the take-home message. And sterilization is again by either physical or chemical means, and it also destroys the resistant bacterial spores. But obviously the cost of doing these processes is different. The effort that is required to do these processes is different. So in order of priority, we adapt different kind of methods for different areas and different surfaces and different equipments. Disease causation. So this is a famous triangle. Maybe you heard about it before also, where there is a host, there is an agent, and there is an environment. So these three things are required to cause any kind of disease. Okay, whether it's infectious disease or non-infectious disease. Now, what is the host? The host is the person or the animal or anybody who is developing a disease, right? Agent is the causative factor of disease. So it could be chemical, physical, or biologic. Since we are discussing infectious diseases, we are most interested in the biological agents of disease, which include bacteria, viruses, fungi, these kind of things. And then there are environmental factors which are important to all kinds of disease, whether infectious or non-infectious. Let's discuss the host characteristics. What could be the host characteristics that can lead to infections? We are all working in healthcare and we all have some idea कि कौन से लोगों को बीमारियां ज्यादा लगती हैं, especially infectious diseases ज्यादा लगती हैं. Can someone pitch in and answer? यहाँ पर लिखी हुई भी हैं, लेकिन other than that, anything else or anybody wants to explain? Yes, old age, immunocompromised, elderly people, very good. Sirf old age, yes, and children also. Very good, Bushra. Why children also? Because at extremes of age, our immune system is not working that well. In early age, the immune system is not developed, and in old age, the immune system becomes weak and fatigues out. So yes, due to our weak immune system. Then gender. Some of the diseases are more common in females and other diseases are more common in males, right? Not so much in infectious diseases, but yes, in COVID, we have seen that males develop more severe disease compared to females. And children are not that badly affected as compared to adults. So age and gender becomes important here. Occupation. Healthcare workers are more prone to develop infectious diseases compared to any other disease because they come in contact with a lot of infectious patients. Races, yes. Black races, Asians are more exposed to, yes, osteoporosis is more common in females, very good. Because, why? Because of their menopausal effect. Because of menopause, their hormones stop protecting them. The lack of estrogen stops protecting them against osteoporosis. In race, yes, we can see that HIV is very common in the black race in Africa, and Asians are more prone to develop TB, but it's not the only determinant of developing these infections. There are other environmental factors also, which we will discuss. Marital status, very important. So for sexually acquired diseases, marital status or reproductive status is very important. And genetic profile in genetically acquired diseases is very important. Now coming to types of agents is, I think, fairly clear in infectious diseases. So the presence of agent is absolutely required. In the absence of an agent, an infectious disease cannot occur at all. However, environmental factors are very, very contributing. So for among the environmental factors, crowding is very important in infectious diseases. Can you name an important infectious disease in Pakistan that is spread by crowding? Yes, very good. TB. So TB is a very important infectious cause of diseases which is spread due to crowding. And what about air temperature and humidity? Very good. TB, yes. TB is the most common and it is a huge burden in Pakistan because of overcrowding. But any infectious disease that is spread by droplet spread, for example, now COVID also is spreading more because of the crowding. In crowded areas, COVID will spread more, influenza will spread more, measles will spread more. But some diseases like measles and all, they develop lifelong immunity after one exposure. So that is why adults will not develop it if they've had it in the childhood. Meningitis, yes, very good. Air temperature and humidity. So we see that in winters, some of the viral infections become very common. Pneumonias become very common because the temperature goes down and it facilitates the multiplication of these organisms. Similarly, humidity. Water and food is very, very important because waterborne diseases come from water, and foodborne diseases are found in improperly cooked food. So a lot of the gastroenteritis that we see, salmonella, these kind of diseases, typhoid, that is, they are waterborne and foodborne diseases. Yes, very good. So signs and symptoms of infections. Now I know that, yes, hepatitis is also a very good example. Thank you, Imama. Shigella also. So signs and symptoms of infection, I'm sure everybody knows what are the signs and symptoms of infections. So the first and the most important sign of infection is fever. Fever आ जाए तो बस फिर ये है कि जी infection ही है. क्या इन fever infection के अलावा भी किसी और चीज में आ सकता है? Can there be non-infectious causes of fever also? Yes or no? And if yes, what can be the non-infectious causes of fever? Yes, okay, Saima says yes. And what could be those, Saima? Can you name one example of a disease where fever can be there, but there is no infection? Anyone? Yes, so what kind of disease? There are infectious diseases and non-infectious diseases, right? In non-infectious diseases, we have 2 or 3 major groups. In those 2 or 3 major groups, we put malignancies, right? Any type of cancer. Yes, very good, Bushra. Autoimmune diseases. The second group could be autoimmune diseases. Very good. And number 3 could be drugs. Drugs cause a lot of effects which go unnoticed. Yes, Simon, drugs. So these 3 are very, very important non-infectious causes of fever. So trauma per se, Noreen, does not actually cause a high-grade fevers. For a first few days, maybe it can cause fevers due to pain because an inflammatory reaction is evoked. Burns can cause fevers even in the absence of infections. Yes, because there's a lot of inflammation going on in the body due to the burns. So always keep these things in mind and do not jump to a knee-jerk reflex of finding out before taking a detailed history. Yes, and fever is a very important response against infection, and this is a natural response because nature wants to tell the human body in the early days, many a times we don't have any signs and symptoms of the destruction that is going on in the body. So this is nature's way of telling us that something is going wrong in the body and it needs to be investigated and dealt with. So in that case, fever is a very important sign of infection. So it should, whenever a person reports fever, it should be charted. It should be seen how high the fever is going, what is the pattern of fever, how frequently it is coming. Is it coming weekly? Is it coming daily? Is it coming many times in one day? So that tells you how, whether this is an acute or a chronic infection, whether it is associated with any other symptoms, whether the fever is probably any viral infection which is acute, and that may settle if it is in a declining pattern in the first few days, shows that it is settling down itself. If it is not and it is coming since months and months, you need to investigate for chronic infections like TB, HIV with other opportunistic infections, or other causes of chronic fevers, which I just mentioned, like malignancies, like autoimmune diseases, or any drugs that the patient is taking. Any other associated symptom is also very important. So whenever you see a patient with infectious diseases, a detailed history is very, very, very important. It is said that one of the longest histories in medicine is an ID history, because we sometimes go back to exposures in childhood, how the parents are doing, how the siblings are doing, what is the workplace like, what kind of exposures are there in recreational areas, whether the patient has traveled anywhere, what kind of milk do they drink, what type of water do they drink, what type of food do they eat, whether they eat dairy products which are not pasteurized. So it is a very, very detailed history. We take a detailed sexual history, and all these things give us a clue, and it's very interesting actually. It looks like a movie where you're solving a puzzle and you are getting clues from here and there, and in the end, mostly, I mean, more than 90% of the cases, we are able to reach somewhere. It guides us to where to narrow down our differentials, because infectious diseases, like any other field, is very, very vast. So where do we need to focus when anybody comes in with infection? And that only comes in with a history. If we ignore the history and just go for labs, we can keep checking the labs for years and years, and we will not get a clue unless we take a good history. So associated symptoms you can have chills, you can have sweats. Cough is a very important symptom, and that points towards the respiratory system. So kind of cough, whether it's productive or non-productive. If productive, then what kind of, is there sputum production? If sputum production is there, then the color of sputum, is there any blood in the sputum? All these things are very important for diagnostic purpose also. If there is sputum production, then we can